Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video I got some new Death Knight abilities to share with you guys for Death Knights come Shadowlands. We already knew that in Shadowlands a lot of classes are going to be getting back old school classic abilities, but those are not the ones we'll be talking about. We are not talking about abilities you previously had in one expansion or the other, and now Blizzard is bringing it back. Instead, we got some new information about Death Knights and some of the new abilities that they will be able to get based on the covenant of their choice. We don't have a visual preview of these abilities, but we do have a list from recent information that came out recently. And I want to take a look at what is the potential of these abilities and what are Death Knights getting for covenant abilities as of right now. I do want to take this time before getting into the abilities to explain a couple things. There's a good chance some of you guys skipped a bunch of other videos and you might be not aware of what these covenant abilities even are. So covenants are going to be one of the biggest parts of Shadowlands. It's going to be a way to progress your character. It's going to be a way for you to join a covenant to get specific rewards out of them. Each covenant has a different theme, has a different look, and is supposed to have a different quest line. Joining a covenant allows you to get a class ability. That means for every single class, there's 4 different abilities to choose from. Every covenant gives you a travel ability, which is how you'll traverse the world, all different depending on the covenant of choice, as well as various rewards that have different cosmetical value. So for a Death Knight, you will have 4 different class abilities to choose from. These are, however, class abilities. That means they must be able to encompass every part of what makes a Death Knight. That means they gotta be usable for a tank, but also usable for a DPS. So all of them are gonna have some sort of a tanky benefit, maybe a damage benefit, maybe a resource benefit. But that's the gist of what covenants are and how class abilities with covenants work. Also, as per usual, this is the first time we're hearing about these abilities. So there's a good chance that Blizzard is gonna make changes, balance them out, maybe even redesign them completely by the time the game comes out. But this is what they have to work with so far. Death's Due, which is from the Night Fae Covenant. Instant 30-yard range, 45-second cooldown, which is fairly short. The targeted ground becomes to wilt, dealing nature damage over 10 seconds to targets within the area. Drain power from each enemy within the area, reducing their damage done by 10% and increasing your strength by 80 for 10 seconds. The way they made it sounds like a modified Death and Decay, except you decide to choose an area that begins to wilt for the Night Fae ability, which is cool. The nature damage is going to be different than Frost or Shadow that you would get from Blood or Unholy, so that's interesting. I think this will be easily usable in a lot of dungeons and raids for the 10% damage reduction to you, but also the strength increase. The more enemies stack in it, the better it is for you. In PvP, I could see someone like a Death Knight, let's say, getting attacked by a rogue or a monk or any other melee class. You drop down Death's Due on top of you and then stand your ground. The enemy will have to run away from you in order to deal 10% more damage to you. Otherwise, they're straight up nerfed. I could also see it from a Death Knight's perspective going against a caster. Hit him with a Chain of Ice to slow him down, drop Death's Due on top of it as a Warlock is casting Chaos Bolts in your face. They'll have to stop and move out of the area while slowed by Chain of Ice before they can start doing anything decent. We don't know just how big the area effect of this ability is. It could be massive, so it could be very, very difficult for anybody to escape it. It could also be very, very small, so it's a very concentrated ability. However, it seems versatile and very decent. On a fairly short cooldown with a pretty far range, this ability seems really cool. One of the things to know that Night Fae actually don't only have to do with druidism and animal spirits, but also a little bit of Drustvar. So it makes me wonder if it will have a little bit of that Drustvar look for the spell itself. The next ability is Shackle the Unworthy. It'll be carrying ability, and we actually seen this one in the live streams before. Instant 30-yard range, 1-minute cooldown. Admonish a target for their past transgressions, reducing the damage they deal to you by 5%, and dealing a set amount of arcane damage over 14 seconds. Shackle the Unworthy's cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds when you damage the affected enemy with a rune spending attack. That means abilities like Obliterate, Festering Strike, Scourge Strike, and Marrow Rend, any abilities that consume a rune, will actually shave off the CD of this ability. So if you're able to combine other abilities that increase your resource generation for runes, then it could be quite easy for you to maintain Shackle the Unworthy on an enemy. And last time we looked at it on the BlizzCon demo floor with a couple streamers that got to play it, this ability does quite a bit of damage. It has that 5% reduction, but it's something that can be maintained on an enemy almost all the time. Great ability for a tank to focus down a single enemy to make sure that they are always dealing 5% less damage to them, but for a DPS this is quite a good extra damage over time ability. It is arcane, so it can be buffed for Unholy or Frost, but it's still a very nice touch. The next one is my favorite. We got ourselves Swarming Mist from Ventir. Instant 1 minute cooldown, a heavy mist surrounds you for 8 seconds, increasing your avoidance and deals shadow damage every 1 second to enemies within 10 yards. For each enemy damage, you gain 3 runic power. So this one, unlike the other abilities, doesn't actually apply to the enemy, but rather a self buff. So it will do shadow damage to enemies. I think the numbers are still a little bit finicky, but Blizzard is going to be adjusting those here and there. And the avoidance could be quite good in specific situations. But the fact that this ability can give you a bunch of runic power, imagine being surrounded by an army of enemies. As a Frost Death Knight while you're using Frost Breath, this will fuel your runic power consumption incredibly high, and this ability has a little bit of this versatility to it. This could be a decent ability, especially if it's off of the GCD, to use in between your rotation for a single target. But in AoE or in a cleave situation, I feel like this is where most of its value can come from. Avoidance, however, is a weird stat. Avoidance increases how much less damage you take from AoE based abilities. Having a high amount of avoidance means you can survive certain abilities that a boss would use, which technically count as an AoE, like a way to wipe out a bunch of enemies in a cone or in a wave. This ability would technically be best in order to help you tank up for that attack. It has, again, very interesting uses, but what I really like about it is the runic power increase. I think this could potentially be really good as long as Blizzard is able to balance out the damage numbers, if the damage might seem worth, because doing only 136 shadow damage every 1 second would be very low. And then we got probably the most interesting one out of a bunch, Abomination Limb from the Necrolords. Instant 1.5 minute cooldown, so this has the longest cooldown, so should have the best effect. Sprout an additional limb for 8 seconds, dealing shadow damage every 2 seconds to the nearest enemy. If the enemy is farther than 5 yards from you, they are pulled to your location. This means that it is, in a way, what it sounds like, an auto grip. So imagine being a Death Knight, and you are generally a slow class. Some people even call you a wheelchair class, just because of the way that Death Knights are designed. Besides Death Grip to take the enemy and grip them over to you, the Death Knights don't really have a lot of gap closers. So imagine if you could grow an Abomination Limb that fights at your enemy and claws them with shadow damage, and if they ever get away, like a healer running away from the Death Knight, it automatically grips them back and keeps you chained next to the Death Knight for the duration. This would mean that Death Knights could unleash big bursts and not ever, with this ability, have to worry about a healer or any target escaping their grasp for at least 8 seconds for the duration. This is a very interesting ability with its death grip thing. I wonder if it can be used on bosses or other enemies. This seems very busted, and wow, I really like just how the fact that you grow a whole nother limb. I feel like that embodies what a Death Knight would be able to do. Either way, all these abilities are really exciting to read, and honestly, as someone who's not even a Death Knight main, I'm glad that Death Knights are getting really good abilities to look forward to. It feels like it almost should be a Death Knight expansion. You know, we're talking about death. We had the Lich King there in the cinematic, so of course Death Knight should get something awesome from this expansion. Either way though, all these abilities, if you were to ignore the numbers that they have right now, it seem very, very close to one another in terms of utility as well as usefulness. If the numbers are the same, of course, Swarming Mist seems like is the worst ability because it does the least amount of damage and maybe only useful in AoE. But if Blizzard is able to fine-tune these abilities to be very competitive to one another, at least in pure single-target situations, I think this could be really, really good. Although I love the idea of, let's say, a PvPer, thinking that, you know what, Abomination's Limb is going to make it easier for me to stay on top of healers. Or a Frost Death Knight who loves to do Mythic Pluses, saying, you know what, Swarming Mist will let me use my Frost Breath for a lot longer, I think it fits me. Or maybe even a tank Death Knight saying, you know, Shackle and Worthy is great against bosses, but I need that Death's Due in order to deal with the adds. Never have a problem with bosses, but the adds are always trouble for me. So as a Blood Death Knight, you decide, you know what, Death's Due it is. I like that there is a lot of possibility for contemplation, and these choices really do feel like they are meaningful. Again, I would love for these abilities to be as close as possible to one another on pure single target DPS output, but I don't know if this is what Blizzard is looking forward to. Maybe they do want these abilities to be different. I guess only time will tell as we get more information of Shadowlands. I also do like how every one of these abilities is thematically different, like the Night Fae and the very Drustvar-like ability use that it has, the very Drustvar spin that it can give Death Knight. Kyrian being, the angelic spirit reserves that we see in graveyards every time we die. Those guys even have an ability for Death Knights themselves to shackle the unworthy enemies, like as if a Death Knight you decide the judge, the jury, and the executioner that enemy is not worthy. Venthyr with their, of course, Swarm and Miz being all vampiric-like, or Necrolords with a little abomination limb growing out of a Death Knight. So far, I'm very excited about Shadowlands, and this article leaves me even more excited, and honestly, cannot wait for this expansion to come out. I cannot wait to see more abilities from Covenants, especially those for rogues. I am so excited but so nervous that rogues will get something bad from the Venthyr faction. I already made the choice. I'm gonna be playing Venthyr. I like the way they look, but I'm really hoping the ability really matches to what a rogue can do. Either way, Shadowlands is looking that much better, and honestly, I'm excited about these Death Knight abilities. You guys are more than welcome to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about these new Covenant abilities for Death Knights in particular? What are your thoughts? Do you think they're good? Do they sound great for you? If you were to change them in one way or another, how would you go about doing so? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.